Good evening. I'm Julie Cohen, the president of the Oklahoma Arts Institute, and I want to welcome you all to our first public performance of 2013. Yay. I do want to remind you that we do not allow flash photography, cell phones, or the use of other electronic devices. Please make sure your cell phones are in the off position. If you need to use the restroom during the performance, the restrooms are up on the deck out to the right. So you'll go up the stairs and out to the right. And immediately following the performance, there will be a reception up on the deck. The reception is hosted by a wonderful group of volunteers from surrounding communities, and tonight it's hosted by volunteers from Blair, El Dorado, and Hollis, and I believe we have I have the volunteers here this evening. I want to ask them to please stand so that we could recognize them and get the house lights. Can we get a light up there? Thank you all. Our volunteers spend a lot of time cooking thousands of cookies and hosting the reception, so we really appreciate everything they do for us. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce our first performance tonight. Dr. André Thomas is the Director of Choral Activities and a Professor of Choral Music at Florida State University. He has conducted choirs throughout the world, including international engagements in far-ranging places, such far-ranging places as China, the Philippines, Europe. He's also a composer and arranger, and he returns to Quartz Mountain this summer for his second time. We're so thrilled to be able to bring him back. Please welcome Dr. André Thomas.
Is my mic on? Can you hear me? All right. It's a delight to be back here at Quartz Mountain. It took 20 years, but I did live long enough to see the opportunity to come back. Tonight won't be about my life or my career. It will be about a passion that I developed from a very early time that grew and developed into a book, into a study about something that became very, very important in my life. We're going to begin in 1 second. I just want you to take back and listen. We're going to darken this place all the way up. The title of the book is Way Over in Beulah Land, Understanding and Performing the Negro Spiritual, which is the song of the slave. Now, we could have it completely dark. Just listen for a moment.
But it's yet on the far side.
Seems to me they's getting closer.
Us is dead now, and this water is mighty cold. So cold. Toss going back with you. That's right. We got to go back.
I say hush. And listen here. Ain't a soul going back. That's how I kiss you for this. I kiss you right here in this young river. Every soul that done started this young journey is gonna make it to freedom. But the first and every soul that look back to slavery gonna die right here in this young river. For I see to it. Is we clear?
We ain't going but the freedom. Surely we is. I smells freedom. I smells it too. I sure
just
smell
as soon as die here and go here back on slavery.
Fine. Then lay low and keep your heads above water, children. Just wait. Now stay close together so you can keep warm. Now don't you worry about that damn mouse and them dogs, cause God's gonna trouble this young water. Just trust God and trust old Moses him. And wait, children, cause we's on our way to freedom.
The year is 1619. A Dutch man of war has landed on the gorgeous coast of Virginia, bringing in that ship the first of the African slaves. They came from many regions, all along that incredible west coast of Africa. You had slaves on that ship that were from the Fon, or the Akan, or the Yoruba, or the Igbo, or the Ashanti, or the Mandingo. Numerous, numerous tribes. You saw a picture of the slave ship. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people kept underground. Many of them would never make the beautiful shores of our coast. Disease, illness, fear pervaded. What about communication? They were different tribes. It is like what they say in the Bible about the Tower of Babel. That tower that was built when man became so involved and ingratiated with himself that finally fell. And at that moment, all the languages appeared. The slaves arrived, fearful and very far from home. We can turn the lights up just a little bit. You heard a reenactment. In that reenactment, you heard a voice that said, "Trust old Moses here." Old Moses was the name that the slaves gave to a wonderful woman by the name of Harriet Tubman. She was tough. You notice she said, not a soul gonna turn back from slavery and from freedom, or I'll kill you for it. Why was that so precious for her? One single frightened runaway slave could be caught, and the whole group could be killed. Slaves arrive. Big problem. How do you keep a group of people enslaved? Well, the first part was easy. We couldn't talk to each other. That was number one. What's the next tool we can do? Destroy the family structure. That means that the slave becomes no better than the cattle, the livestock, that could be traded, sold. Mothers sold away from children, fathers sold more quickly because they were strong. The family structure being destroyed. What else could you give them? Give them religion. Give them religion. And it is amazing that what man feels for evil, God can turn to good. And as I said before, Langston said this, it's amazing, out of man's inhumanity to man should come forth America's greatest art form. You take a choir anywhere in the world, including Tonga, and you say you're from America, they want to hear a spiritual. Okay? They may call it gospel, but they want to hear a spiritual. So, how do you give them religion? You send itinerant preachers from plantation to plantation, and they began to preach. Uh-oh. They start with the Old Testament. And who do they talk about first? Moses. Okay? Now, what are these slave songs? Big debate. Okay? They are simply the folk music of the slave. No new spirituals have been written since 1865. How were those songs created? The itinerant preacher would preach about Moses, and lo and behold, there's Corey, and he hears about Moses. And all of a sudden he says, go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. That song's born. Who else in the Old Testament? Can you think of anybody? Oh, Elijah. Now, what is it the slave would love about Elijah? How did Elijah die? If you didn't read the Bible, have you seen the oratorio? How does he die? How does he die? Can I get a little bit more light on the audience? How does he die? Well, he's caught up in a chariot to heaven. He doesn't die. And we see Elijah, Moses, and Jesus, and we go, Elijah, rock, shout, shout. Who else is in the Old Testament? Joshua. Why would we love Joshua? He was young. He marched around those walls. He led his chosen people into the promised land. And upon hearing that, Broderick said, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. That song was born. Okay? Who else in the Old Testament? That's kind of New Testament. But who? It's okay. It's okay. Daniel. Yeah, didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? And why not every man get me out of Mississippi? All right? Daniel. Now, my favorite guy, I remember going to the government sent me to Israel, and I had a choir of, believe it or not, 600 Jews from all over the world. And we sang, and we sang, and we sang at Hebrew University and down at the hall, and we broadcast all over Israel. Amen. But anyway, that's another story. But anyway, I have a picture in front of the tomb of David with my yarmulke on, okay? David, I love David. Why do I love David so much? David was a musician, okay? He danced before the Lord, but he did all kinds of crazy things. And God said, he's my chosen, David is my chosen man. And I thought, now if God can love David after all the stuff he did, I got a chance. So we heard, and I'm getting to the three kinds of spirituals. First, the Old Testament. With David, I heard, little David, play on your harp. Hallelujah. That one's born. Now we get to the New Testament. Okay? Now, who do you suppose the slave loved in hearing about the New Testament? Take a guess. Somebody's saying it softly. It's okay. Lightning won't strike. Who do you think? Jesus, of course. Jesus. Oh, we love Jesus. We made lots of songs about Jesus. But you know, they would preach to us from Paul, and they would preach from only one passage they would reiterate. And there's a passage that said, if you are a slave, be a good slave. Well, my ancestors said, forget that nonsense. No songs about Paul. We'll But we have a couple, you know. Paul and Silas were in jail. Yes. Okay. There were songs about Paul, and we admitted that he was a great preacher. Okay? If you cannot sing like an angel, if you cannot preach like Paul. So that's the New Testament. Okay? Then we had a third kind of spiritual, and that one is personal meaning. And you can help me explain this. If I say to you, swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry. That's it. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did? A band of angels coming after. You understand that personal category. And yeah, you can't miss that because you're smart. It is from that category that some major forms grow and develop. Okay? All personal. Listen. My baby left me in Quartz Mountain. Did you see my baby? Ain't she fine? Okay. What's that called? Somebody's lived it, haven't you, son? The blues, you know. And from the blues then develops jazz and others, and then it gets to a religious form that the blues develops from, all from that slave music, and you get this. I got a telephone in my bosom, and I can call him up from my heart. We're talking about God. Call him up, tell him what you want, call him. Yeah, I didn't say definitive poetry, but that's gospel music, okay? That's gospel music. And so that's still the personal. And in fact, there was a man by the name of Thomas Dorsey who lost wife and children. He was a blues singer. And upon losing those wife and children, he wrote a very personal song that's now found in most hymnals throughout this country. And the words are, precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. So those are the three kind. All right, now, what do they mean? You were handed a piece of music, and we're going to have a lot more light than this. You were handed a piece of music. It's a spiritual arrangement that I did back in 1982. I have been trying to replicate this piece ever since. It's not had a year under 40,000 copies, and everything else I've written has had very few since then. But anyway, here's the piece. The name of the piece is Keep Your Lamps. All right. Now, you got to understand three things about this when you sing these spirituals. You have to have the literal meaning of the text. Where did the slave hear this text? Well, the slave is listening to that itinerant preacher. He's sitting probably where Jonathan is up there that's hiding. He's sitting there and he's listening to this preacher talk about this. There were some wise and there were some foolish virgins, and they were told to trim their lamps and go meet the bridegroom at an appointed time. So thus, they trimmed their lamps, okay, set them burning, and went to the appropriate place. Choir, I'm going to remind you about this because I've heard this song from Russians and Chinese, and sometimes, diction is not always, precise. Keep your lamps turned out to keep your lambs trimmed and burning. But anyway, they set the wicker burning. They went to the appointed place. So they got there, okay? The Bible does not tell us why, but it was as typical fashion. The bridegroom didn't come on the first night. So, and we don't know why they couldn't be Christian enough to share the same light, but the Bible tells us that the poor foolish ones went back to the village to get more light, more oil for their lamps. While they were away, the bridegroom came, and Jesus says, you know not the day nor the hour when the Son of Man will return. Be ye ready. Jonathan hears that and he goes, ooh, you better keep your lamps trimmed and burning. And that song now is born. So when you perform this music, it has an unusual meaning, okay? The literal meaning. Next meaning. I think that's Troy up there. Yeah, that's Troy up there. Troy's my buddy. Troy is my buddy. Now, Troy is a slave. He doesn't know it, but he's my buddy, okay? He's out in the field with me. And I hear that Harriet Tubman is coming, or maybe Peg Leg Joe. I want Troy to know this, okay? But I can't go, Troy, Harriet Tubman's coming. Bam, bam, dead slaves, okay? I can't do that. But what I could do in the field, I could get Troy's eye, and I could see if he's over there, and I go, keep your lamps, and he go, trimmed and burning. And what they tell us is before daybreak, Troy is gone without me, but he's gone. Okay? So, the songs have a sociological meaning as well. All right. Were there other songs in the field? Yes, there were definitely other songs in the field. I'm in the field. I can't see. I don't know if I am alone. I could see Reiner, and I go, is he there? And I would do what they would call a wordless call, okay? Thomas, I'm going to do this wordless call to know if you're here. Yo-ho, yo-ho. And Thomas answers, yeah. Yeah. So I then know. Then we had calls for the water boy. Now there's this whole old adage, like black people just love to sing and dance. Black people just love to sing and dance. Well, the truth of the matter is there wasn't much choice. What it was, as a slave, it was make a noise and get a hand, because a quiet slave was a dangerous slave. Now, I'm from Kansas. There are no plantations in Kansas. At least I don't think so. But my second teaching job, I had left the University of Texas and I moved to Florida State. Wonderful dean there. And I get a notice in my box, and it says, Dear Professor Thomas, / Professor André. Okay? You're going to get a call later on this afternoon. I hope you can help the school out. Thanks, Dean Robert Glidden, / Bob. That's not the worst part. Happy face. Okay? So I get this call. Hello? Dr. Thomas? Yes. My name is John Ireland. I'm calling you from my home in England. I said, oh, fantastic. How might I help you, Mr. Ireland? He said, I have a plantation about 20 minutes south of Tallahassee. I said, you have a what? He says, I have a plantation about 20 minutes south of Tallahassee. I took a deep breath. I thought, I don't have tenure. I'll keep listening to this man. And then the next thing he says to me, I want to bring all my family in. And what he didn't tell me is they own all of the plantations practically on that whole strip. I want to bring my family in for a Christmas, a Christmas party. Yes, how might I help you? He says, it's going to be Christmas Eve. And I said, Mr. Ireland, we have no students here Christmas Eve. He said, your dean said you could make this happen. So I said, okay. And he said, I want to hear Balm and Gilead. And I went, Balm and Gilead for Christmas? I said, that's not a Christmas song, Mr. Ireland. He says, I know, but I can just smell the food coming from the kitchen. I'm going, oh, jeez. Okay? So I said, okay, I'll do what I can do. So I didn't want to put students in that situation. I thought if he's going to hear Balm and Gilead, he's going to hear it louder than he's ever heard it in his life. So I took the voice faculty. So we're in my van, and we're going, and he said, look for the cat eyes. So I turned, there were the cat eyes. Look for the iron gate that says Ireland, that says Hibernian, which is the name for Ireland. Saw it. He says, so I get out of my van, I open the iron gate, drive the van through, go back, close, and then I start to drive, and I look on my left, and I look on my right, and I see fields and fields and fields. And I also see the old slave huts still there. And I'm driving, I'm going, 1985, 1985, 1985. So we keep driving, it says servant entrance, and I thought, I've had enough. So I drive to the front door, and I get out, and I go to the front door, and this older black man opens the door, and he said, can I help you, son? I said, we're here to sing for Mr. Ireland. And he said, well, there's a servant's entrance. I said, I know, sir, but I couldn't do that. He said, I understand. Come on in, son. Okay. So we sang it. Now, why do I even bring up the fact of plantations? How did this music sound? Writers tell us it sounds like billows of sound were coming from the field. Now it's your turn. I want you to sing a little bit of this song for me. Even for any of you that think you don't sing, just trust. Here we go. And keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh. Hey, you're good. Okay, let's do it without Judy helping us. Go. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh. Now, kindly stand. Turn and face that wall. Okay? Put your right hand on the shoulder of the person in front of you. Okay? Now, this is what's going on. Your right and your arm will symbolize the chain between the two of you. Around your ankles are metal called shackles. And there's a way you have to move, because if I'm moving with the shackle, what must I do? I have to drag my foot. I can't go like this, or what happens to the person behind me? They're gone. All right. Let me hear you sing it and move. Okay? Move with the foot underneath the hand that you have in front of you. and go. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving, Charles. All the way to the wall. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. And the time is running out. Fantastic. Now, if I had an aerial view of all of you people, imagine planted between you crops and field. And that's when they said the sound was like billows of sound coming from the field. Do you understand that this music is not caricature music? It is music of sorrow and joy of a people of dignity. Thank you. Go back to your seat. The last thing I'm going to talk about for just a second is dialect. Dialect. That was probably the thing about this music that I most despise. Growing up, I hated this music. I hated it. Soon it will be done with the trouble of the world, the trouble of the world, the trouble of the world, soon it will be done. I just hated that music. Well, there were a number of reasons. Wichita at the time was segregated. Our schools were segregated. And I had the great privilege of integrating a junior high school before integration. So it was me and the whole rest of the school. It wasn't an easy place till I got to the music room, where I became a member of the lads and lasses, and we wore kilts and plaid shirts. Then I went to high school. There were 5 of us. There would have been 6. My sister taught German and English there, but she was having my nephew, so there were only 5 left. I went to the choir room, and the choir teacher said, soon it would be done with the trumpets of the world, the trumpets of the world, the trumpets of the world. And then she looked over at me, right where Dakota is, and said, it's your solo, André. You sing a solo. There's no solo on that piece. Make it up. I hated that music. Plus, our school song was Dixie, so it wasn't. So I get out of high school at 15, and I turn 16, and I go to Friends University, where I become a singing Quaker. And so I'm sitting there, and we just had Charles Hurt come in, and we did Song of Democracy. It was wonderful. And this tiny little black man came in, and his name was Jester Harrison. And he started to work with the choir. And he started with his spirituals. And I knew better than to be disrespectful, because I knew my mother could see anything. So I was there, but he was a wise teacher. This is what he did. He let me have my attitude. And there was a little break, and he said, son, can I talk with you? I said, yes, sir. And he said, I don't think you like this music very much. I said, no, sir, I hate this music. And he said, what is it that bothers you? I said, this music feels like it's a chance for white people to make fun of black people, you know? I don't look at my mother and go, Shuna will be doing it with the trouble of the world. She slapped me and say, talk to me, boy. You know? And then he made a really simple explanation. He said, your ancestors, out of all the dialects in Africa, there is no TH sound. It doesn't exist. Your ancestors simply accommodated. I went, oh, okay. And then he talked to me about several other rules that you're going to see from this man here. His name is James Weldon Johnson. The Johnson brothers, they lived in Jacksonville, Florida. He was the poet, James Weldon. His brother was the musician. They wrote a song called Lift Every Voice and Sing that for a while was considered the Negro national anthem. And it's in many hymnals. So, one of the other rules that James Weldon talks about is the R. You know, you don't go mother, you go mother. What happened to me? That semester, I was in a class called English Diction for Singers, Madeline Marshall. What does she say about R's? R's preceded by E are to be considered a schwa, unless their initial R, which are then flipped in oratorio or rolled for dramatic effect in opera. I said, Jiminy, my ancestors knew 500 years ago to sing well, you don't sing those R's. Okay? And I fast forwarded to my second year teaching at the University of Texas. I'm doing a festival, and this song that you just sang, there are 3 judges, one goes up. School came in from the valley. Those of you that know from Texas know what I mean. They came in from the valley. Naomi was the conductor, and her first selection, her final selection was Keep Your Lamps, arranged by André Thomas. And they started. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning, keep your lamps trimmed and burning, keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing, now keep your lamps. You even changed the rhythm. All right, so they sang it. Naomi didn't know I was one of the judges. And they said, ladies and gentlemen from Eagle Pass High School, your clinician for today is Dr. André Thomas. And you could hear Naomi go, oh, So I go up and I see those young people and I say, you know, Naomi was in her own thing too, because she was going through her Chicano period. She was dressed in leather pants and a leather jacket, you know. And I was still in my Afrocentristic period. That's when I had hair out to here, and I braided every night to make sure it was that. Okay. So I looked at those young people and I said, you know, I enjoyed your performance. I said, I've never heard it like that before. I said, let me tell you how I feel about this piece of music. I then did with them what I just did with you. And they went, oh. Oh. I said, yes. Yes. I'm leaving the hall. I'm walking to my car, and this young woman comes up. Dr. Thomas, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Thomas. I said, yes. That song. I said, that song. What? It makes me, I said, what, sweetheart? It makes me what? She said, it makes me feel so black. And I said, you know what? It makes me feel black too. Now, I'm about out of time, and there's so much because I really wanted you to hear and see some things from Green Pastures and hear the voices of all the arrangers. I have them on tape, I have them on sound, so you could hear what they sounded like. But I will say this to you in my closing remarks. You can read the book about the rest. When that young lady spoke to me, something registered really quickly. I looked up to the sky and I said, thank you, Mr. Harrison. It's come full circle. You took an obnoxious, know-it-all kid. I thought I was pretty hot. I was in college. I was 16. Who was embarrassed about his heritage. Who was embarrassed about his heritage and helped him appreciate where he came from. Little did Mr. Harrison know that it would become a life work for me. I got to see him before he died. We honored him. And he said, son, come with me. If you don't know who I'm talking about, there used to be a sitcom called Amen. He was Raleigh the deacon. If you ever saw Lilies of the Field, the voice of Sidney Poitier is Chester Harrison. He was in the old Amos and Andy show, et cetera, et cetera. And I got to lead the entire American Choral Directors in a tribute to this incredible giant. I leave you with this. The music of our culture, of our great culture, and our cultures are extensive, okay? When we do multicultural music, we do not do multicultural music as a caricature. Our job is to make sure that we understand the culture so that there's a kid there will be enhanced by someone acknowledging his culture. And that kid who is not from that culture will gain respect for that culture. Then multicultural music works. It's not just a gimmick to end the concert. Okay? It is a life experience. And when I think of this little guy who grew up in Kansas, whose mother cleaned buses, turned out to be a guy who's conducted in every major hall in the world. I go, thank you, Mr. Harrison. I'm happy I know where I came from. Thank you. To do questions, and they tell me I get 2. Yes, ma'am. Jerome. I can now have 3. Yes, ma'am. Yes, and they developed their own sense of song of enslavement. It's not the same spiritual-like text that we would normally use if you were like, say, for instance, in Haiti, okay? Especially depending upon the practice that those people endured. I was in Brazil, and I was working with all the choral directors came from every part of Brazil. And I remember, people kept going up to me and they go, Bahia, Bahia. I thought they were greeting me. I didn't realize that Bahia was a place. And so the people came in the conductors came in from the Amazon, and then all of a sudden the conductors from Bahia came in. And when I looked and saw the conductors from Bahia, I went, Bahia. Yeah. Where the African traditions are more intact than they are any other, even in many places in Africa. What they said to me is, oh, we love this music. We just can't sing the Jesus part because we practice voodoo. Okay? But so I think each set of people did. I wish I had a moment to play for you probably the most powerful experience I had. Last spring, I was asked to do the African Choral Festival, the first one in Ghana. And so here I am in Accra, and the choirs came from Ghana, they came from Benin, which is French-speaking, etc. And they're all there. I go to the slave castle. It's beautiful, it's all white. And you got to remember that, It was the Dutch, the Portuguese imported slaves even earlier than that. But probably the most powerful thing that happened, the moment that my foot hit the sands of the castle, the choir from Benin began singing to me. And they didn't sing any English except they knew this one. And they started singing, "Oh, freedom." And if I had time, I'd love to let you hear what they sounded like. 'Cause it doesn't sound like African Americans at all, with that sound. They knew that song. They knew it, you know? And when I heard it, my insights turned in and out. Because Mr. Hairston had been good at telling me that my heritage was as a slave. And I didn't attach it to Africa. And then all of a sudden, there, it made sense. It affected me so much that I had DNA done. And part of me comes from there. You know, the other part comes from Ireland, and the other part's Native American someplace. But all I'm saying is it did reach. But each group of people did their own songs. Right? Even if I go to Jamaica, there's a whole different set of folk music there. It's the music of folk people. Nathaniel Dett thought there was a relationship between slavery and Russian serfdom. And sometimes when you hear them sing, you really can identify it. You know? Like, nobody sings "My Rock in Jerusalem" like the Russians. Okay, I've had my question. Thank you.